and welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you? Welcome to the Hard Hat Brigade, everybody. Um,
Yeah, welcome.
Give me a quick second to check some audio, and then we'll get started. I'll need somebody to talk.
That's going fine this afternoon. We have some interesting subjects to go over tonight. A lot of stuff that'll help you get started with getting the basics down for hard hat hacking.
Audio's looking good on the stream.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly, I'm not getting any audio on Twitch.
Oh, really?
That's strange. Audio is coming through for me.
It is for me as well.
Oh boy. Let's see. So why am I not getting any audio on Twitch?
You're coming through on Twitch as well. So all three of us are.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. It must be my computer is not behaving. So, all right. Well, thanks for checking that. I was trying to do it without getting that nasty echo, because that's never fun. Again, welcome to Hard Hat Brigade. I'm Mr. Bill, and we're joined by Monkey Dragon and JRWR. And tonight's topic is, of course, this is not our first stream. Last week we talked about the various types of hard hats, and then JRWR provided a progress report on where he's at on his build, and we're trying to tackle a technical topic every week. Nobody reached out and said, "Hey, I want to show you where I'm at with my hat." So this is going to be all tech talk tonight, and the topic is attachments, or how to attach things to your hard hat. So with that, I will kick things off. Let me double check the agenda here. I guess the first thing is what types of attachments are out there. So we'll go round robin, and please, hopefully, if you have anything handy and available to show off, that would be great as well. So what types of attachments are you two using on your hats?
Why don't you go ahead and go?
Oh.
Yep, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, so specifically with mine, with the pith helmet of Hatchan, the canvas is very hard to stick to. There are several challenges that I had to resolve with actually attaching things to it. One of the things you have to worry, and I'm reaching under my desk to grab Hatchan. One of the things with Hatchan is that when you're working with pith helmets is you do not want to drill into them at all. They will disintegrate on you if you do that. I ruined my first pith helmet because of that. They don't tend to take drilling wire very well, but they do take Velcro very well. Specifically, if you're handling that really sticky stuff that you can get from Walmart.
Ooh, I like
it works very well. Also, for attachments, if you're using this specifically for other types of hats, specifically in most hats have some form of breather hole. Here's Hatchan. Come here. So all of this on Hatchan is held on with just standard Velcro. Yeah, that nice Velcro, right?
The ASMR video.
Yes,
Yeah.
we bring it all.
So this stuff has stayed on there pretty well over the years. Always put fuzzy side down first, of course.
Yeah, definitely include any tips and tricks. Like, I never would have thought that fuzzy down would have mattered, but I'm guessing that you probably learned that through experimentation.
So the first year, I took everything off and wore it on a plane. Just the pith helmet by itself. And everything else was in my luggage. And so the thing was is that I could still wear the hat because hats are hard to travel with.
Right.
Outright. If you don't put them in a big Pelican case, then this is going on the plane with you. You're not going to put this on your luggage. It'll get crushed.
Mhm.
So the trick is having it all removable so it's easy to kind of wear on a, trying to go through security with this thing on, which I have done the second year I went to DEF CON, and they didn't even bat an eye, which is even more hilarious. So, but yeah, everything's held on with Velcro, and the thing is, and specifically when you're dealing with hard hats, is that it really sticks on there, the Velcro. If you're having problems specifically with stickers, and if you're having problems with adhesives on canvas, and this can kind of help with plastics as well, is that a very with kind of a medium to low power heat hair dryer. It heats up the adhesive and gets it a little bit more workable, and then it'll allow you to stick it better. Also for secondary attachments, you can kind of see that I've used a binder clip there with a through hole of the breather holes that are on this. So you can kind of see how I have that mounted. It's actually a washer on the inside there with a standard bolt. And so the best thing you can do if you're trying to get everything fitted out is take the whole thing to a hardware store, right? If you're going to be making hardware for it with the pre-existing holes that you have.
Oh yeah.
Take it to a hardware store and figure out your mounts, right? Just fiddle around with it for a while. Pins do work really well on the canvas. So here I got an ingress pin.
Nice.
So pins work well. You can stick it right into the canvas and it doesn't care. Now there is this tape that I use, and I got a little bit of it back here that I can show you. It's called Very High Bond Tape. I can link it on Amazon, but it's really easy to find. It's usually red backed, and it's little foamy. So if you look, you can actually kind of see it a little bit back there. That double stick tape, that gray double stick. So that stuff throughout the years, yeah, you got some of that. Isn't that stuff legit?
It's pretty good. Yeah, it's not perfect on these high gloss hard hats, but it
So what you have
so
to
well
do
to everything else.
with that stuff is that it actually has little acrylic capsules in it. So you have to put a clamp on it or some form of pressure.
Stuff, I wonder if this one is or not, but yeah, I'll have to try out some of the stuff that you had because it sounded like it might do better.
Is that
And that's what
is that the 3M branded?
This is, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so.
it's usually red backed. They do that on purpose. It's like a standard. With that type of tape, it's called UVB tape. So it's very good for sticking these strips on here, as long as you provide lots of pressure, even pressure for long periods of time with a decent amount. Give it a day and you'll never get it off. You'll just never, you'll break the plastic before it comes off. That's what it's designed for. So, and you can use that kind of for sticking stickers on to a certain degree or other bigger items that are kind of hard. One of the things that you will run into is that hats are a sphere. And so you're going to get wrinkles on your stickers. If you take a little razor blade to them, you can kind of slice them up a little bit. So, and stickers are kind of hard anyway. But and this is for all hats, right? So if you stick to the kind of the oblong ones, oblong stickers are better because they will curve themselves to the actual curvature of the hat, maybe whatever it is.
Yeah, I've also found that the smaller stickers tend to not have as much of a problem with bubbling up.
Right.
But yeah, you do have to get a little creative. And honestly, I'm not walking around with a razor blade in my pocket, so some of the stickers that I have,
box cutter, DEF CON gets a little crazy sometimes. I'm just saying.
True.
but also, and you gotta also realize stress points, and especially when you're running with antennas, you used to have a lot longer antennas on these. So specifically, and you kind of want to realize this for other designs as well, is that you should have some form of where if it gets caught on something, it doesn't immediately break; it gives.
Yeah.
So you do your walking direction, which is this is reversed, but so if you hit something, it'll go down, or if you hit it from the other way, it'll actually just bend forward. And that way, if you're walking around with stuff and you have to set it down, because you will be setting your hat down, your hat should be, especially if you're going to be wearing it during DEF CON, you should be able to set it down. Right, so you should be able to lay it flat on a table as is without it too much worry, including tethers. If you got tethers, please account for length for doing that, or the ability to disconnect and safe power off for people running Linux. And especially with the harder plastics, if you're dealing with like hard hats and that PVC that they use for that kind of stuff, I think it's almost like a polycarbonate that they use on those hats.
Some are a polycarbonate. Most of them are HDPE. Monkey Dragon, do you have your hat handy? Or
so I got a few here. I'm trying to see if I can get it. Yeah, this is a polycarbonate ABS for the Klein one.
Yeah, that one's a little bit. Seems that's like the carbon fiber lookalike one I have is a little bit.
Yeah,
bit harder.
So different plastics will have different characteristics for adhesives.
Yep.
With the plastics, it's a really good idea to do hard mounts, staying away from adhesives where you can for anything that weighs more than an ounce. Right? If you can get away with a hard mount, if you have standoffs, you can do corners where you do like the screw and then it's the edge. Because I'm doing that on some of mine. Yeah.
Nylon standoffs. Pretty much that's how I ended up fastening everything on here. You can see I actually luckily the Pi Zero has 4 holes. The adapter, the Wi-Fi adapter, actually had 2 existing holes, but then I had to drill another one, which I had to be very strategic.
That's very dangerous.
Yeah.
But they have large ground planes, so on top and bottom, so you can usually spot those pretty quickly.
Yeah, one of the things that I also got away with was the use of zip ties. So just putting 2 holes opposite each other and then using a zip tie to hold down cables. And, I did reinforce some of my nylon standoffs with an epoxy because the screws that go with them
will pop out.
Yeah, and they're not, I mean, this is the kit that I have, right? They're not very substantial. They're really small. I didn't put any washers in the back, and they're really short. And a hard hat is actually thicker than I thought. So I don't know if you can tell. That's what, maybe
a quarter an inch or so.
Yeah, it's like a quarter of an inch, and it's really kind of soft. The nylon's soft, so it but this kit's really cheap on Amazon. I think it was $5.
Yeah, that's super helpful because if your drilling holes are just a bit off, that tiny bit of forgiveness you get with that material helps a lot.
So, Monkey Dragon, what did you use for standoffs? Because I know you
standoffs.
Because
so
you had
first
a bunch
year,
of 3D printing.
Right. So first year, I actually ended up borrowing some of those nylon standoffs from you, and I remember sitting in the hotel room, carving out holes with a knife and a punch-out tool just to get those through. The fans were a later addition, and that was pretty much it for this hat. Back to the stickers real quick. The vinyl stickers, like the Hard Hat Brigade one and some of the other ones we've seen, cope a lot better with the curvature on these hard hats than, say, for example, some of these other ones, like on the new hat, which are like, obviously these are wonderful stickers, but they're a little bit stiffer, so they don't forgive as well. But for this hat, most of the things were attached via 3D prints and that high grip tape. A couple things were actually bolted through, drilled out. I don't know if you can see or not in here. There's a small screw kind of down by my finger there. So it's just really being on point with the hole size that you drill and trying to get like a button head screw, or if you've got a washer, things like that would be good. But
So I apologize. I may have gotten the Zoom 40-minute warning. If you saw that at home, I don't know if it popped up or not on your screen. I apologize if I ended up covering part of your. So you said that you're using screws,
mhm.
then on the 3D print side, did you use inserts or?
Yeah, on a couple of these, I did have inserts that I put in there. Either they were brass inserts that I actually melted in with just a standard soldering irons, really good to actually embed them into the plastic. And some of the other spots that I did, not on the hats, but in other 3D prints, where I actually take and leave a relief and actually just slide in a nut, so that way you've got something that's encased in plastic, so you're not worried so much about tearing out threads. As far as actually screwing into any 3D print, there are a handful of really good videos on YouTube that have covered it with the tensile strength and just kind of, based on your application. So honestly, for what we're doing, probably fine just screwing straight into the print itself. And yeah, it should hold up pretty well. So I haven't had any issues. This thing's been banged around a ton. I actually had it sitting in my car for a number of months, and who knows how many times it rolled around. So it's actually held up really well.
I've been very surprised with my pith helmet as well, how well it's held up over the years. Um, Something that I've realized, at least with the first stages, because I'm going through my first hard hat project, was curves are weird. So I'm trying to put a square object on a curve, and it's not wanting to do.
Yep.
So like my big Wi-Fi adapter just wants to stick off into space. So I have to so with standoffs, when you run into this, right, you have to put everything at angles because everything is at this weird angle, especially the
Hmm.
larger you go, and there's some pretty aggressive curves the higher up the hat that you go.
Right.
So what you run
Yeah,
into is
this
uh,
curve,
yeah,
terrible.
yeah. So I'm actually having to cut at an angle standoffs, nylon standoffs with some tin snips,
Mm,
and so that way the bolt will kind of sit flat and flush up against it.
nice.
And I'm kind of doing that by hand, and I'm ruining a lot of standoffs doing it. Um, I,
Yeah, it
I told
happens.
I told myself, in any new holes that I drill on the hat that I don't use, I'm just gonna put an LED in it because I already got a ton of them.
Yeah,
Yeah, smart.
I've got
Party mode.
a couple holes hiding. You can see them at this angle hiding behind my cabling here because, yeah, there's I thought I was going to put a full size pie here, and then I ended up going with the zero, which of course, for symmetry, I wanted to make it oblong. But if you look close, you can tell my standoffs are not in parallel, and it's so hard to get.
Mhm.
Drilling these holes was a real challenge, and the HDPE is pretty soft and forgiving, and I was able to fill in quite a bit of it with for that that was a clincher because I actually had my hat built without anything assisting those standoffs.
Hmm.
And then we were at DEF CON and we're getting ready and all of a sudden it's popping out and I'm like, uh-oh, what do I do? And they have that it's like an epoxy that cures with UV
Oh, yeah.
that you can get, and my friend had some of that. But
This stuff.
yeah, that's pretty cool. But for really sticky stuff, I mean, if I really want to attach
Sorry.
something, I go with Gorilla Epoxy.
Yeah.
This
A friend, two
two part
part.
epoxy. It's messy. It's a little hard to work with, but it's awesome. In fact, I just put the rearview mirror on my wife's car back on using this, and it's one of those Toyotas with the integrated lights and compass and all that, so it's not a very light rear view mirror. And
Yeah.
this stuff's just amazing. But I tried their super glue, and it's kind of like a regular super glue.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
okay.
um, the I will say this: I had a bad experience with super glue. I had a pair of glasses where the nose pad broke off, and so I thought, well, I'll just glue it back on. You got to let this stuff cure because the fumes that come off of it. I put my glasses on about 10 minutes later, and I'm like, gosh, why is my eye like burning? Right? Yeah. Be careful with super glue. And I mean, even the epoxy is not the greatest. It stinks. But
Right. I
So
mean, it's good
something
that you
that's
mentioned the cure times because you want to make sure that stuff is set before you kind of let go or go to set it down and put any sort of pressure on it because you might pick it up again and go, oh snap, this is totally wrong now.
yeah, this has a 5 minute set time, but it comes quick. Like I was
Hmm.
sitting there mixing it. I actually had to do this twice for the rearview mirror thing, but I forgot how quick it sets.
Hmm.
And then after 24 hours, it's rock hard. And you really want to prepare the surface in a lot of cases too, because
rough it
Yep.
up.
Yep.
yeah,
You want something for it to grab onto.
and
That's the same with hot glue.
Yep.
Was first off, you really shouldn't be using on a hat because it gets 100 plus in Vegas, and guess what temperature hot glue melts at? It's like
yeah,
150. So, like, it gets really soft. Now, something that I have used hot glue on was on circuit boards itself. I find that it works relatively well on boards if you're
Mm.
trying to hold just like a connector on, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
like on my Wi-Fi adapter, I've used hot glue to keep the UFLs on there because UFLs like to pop off with vibration.
Oh yeah.
And so what I did, and how you get that clear super glue, by the way, if you're wondering for the future, is a heat gun.
Yep.
Use a heat gun. You get it nice and hot, and it starts to drip, and you use it like a candle, kind of.
yeah.
And so you put it on there, you kind of smear it around, right? And it comes out
Hmm.
perfectly clear. You remove, and then you either continue to use the glue stick or toss it, because it'll get kind of short and you'll burn
So you
yourself.
mentioned
Yeah.
LEDs and holes. I do have a
Yeah,
couple of LEDs, and I actually used hot glue just to kind of tack some of the wires in on the inside, and it's
yeah.
okay. If you put any force on it, it's going to pop off.
Hmm.
But so these lights actually got a switch here. So these lights are not glued in or anything.
Pressure
It,
fit.
they are pressure fit. They're
Nice.
basically what 3 or 5 3 millimeter LEDs, and I press them in until they hit the shoulder, and
Mhm.
so they're just stuck in on
Yeah,
the
you
inside.
can do that. Normal LEDs are 5 millimeter.
Hmm.
Oh, these must be
And
5 then. I apologize.
yeah, if you get a 5 millimeter drill bit and you throw you drill it, and there'll be some burring that happens,
Yeah.
so you can push that in, and it'll stay. Also, if you prep it, and I've done this before with other plastics where you prep it with just a smidgen, just a whisper of super, near the inside lip
Hmm.
where the lens is, and then pop it in, hold, and then release, and then the super glue will mount itself against the plastic, and that'll hold it in as well. Um, there are tapes that you can use, but as you know, tapes are pretty garbage when it comes down to adhesives most of the time.
Hmm.
That's a standard duct tape problem. So just duct tape doesn't tend to work very well when it comes to adhesives and PVC. This is the case with most tapes. Like I said, that double stick tape is going to be your best bet.
Right.
Um, in very thin strips cut with a razor blade, you can use it to stick wire. But the problem that you're going to run into is you have to make sure you have very good coverage of that, or your hair is going to get stuck in it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I would refrain from using any kind of adhesives that will stay sticky over long periods of time on the inside of your hat.
Right. I
Um,
haven't run into that.
I have on my hat sizer. My hat sizer uses a form of double.
Oh, man. Are you kidding me? It kicked me out. Stand by, folks, while we transition and come back in just a moment.
That was super fun.
Oh boy. All right.
We do
Sorry
it
about that,
live.
folks. I'm going to have to do some editing post. Whoops. Let me get out of screen mode here. Let me go to full screen. So, looks like Zoom is no longer allowing people to go longer than 40 minutes. So that warning was a real warning.
Yeah, it was.
So I'm gonna have to do some post show editing before we put this up on YouTube or something. All right, where
Yeah.
were we?
So I think something about adhesives.
Yeah.
So specifically with I know with the plastics, it's best if it's really best if you stick to mechanical mounts where you can. You know, lightweight stuff maybe, but if you can still do a mechanical mount, you'll end up better overall. The hat will last longer. You'll have a better time with it, and you won't have to worry about it falling off in the summer heat of Vegas. Because I've had stuff do that. I don't know about you guys, but I have.
I'm trying to think. I think I've been lucky enough with that, but Yeah, I gotta imagine I've probably dodged a handful of bullets with not having stuff melt or start shifting on me in that heat.
Yeah. Now, also elsewise, and this is for anything that you may potentially be hosting that's explosive on your hat or otherwise large and heavy, is to use some form of Velcro if you can.
Right.
Um, you get one with a very aggressive adhesive. You can usually get some very high bond ones. If not, you can use the very high bond double stick tape on the back of a self stick Velcro
Hmm.
and stick it. Make sure to color match if you can. Um, or maybe if you're doing some kind of like differential color, maybe some black ones on a white surface. If you're
Hmm.
doing contrasting colors, would probably work well. But it's all going to be up to the art design of your hat, of course.
Oh yeah.
So
But go
one
ahead.
of the things I was kind of getting staged before we got cut off was this drill index that I have has like all these tiny little bits, extremely helpful when
Nice.
you are going through and trying to find the right size hole. That's really the only way that I was. It's called a drill index, by the way. It was really the only way I was able to get a decent, close enough hole in order to press fit those LEDs. I mean, the LEDs are all, nominally 5 or 3 millimeter, but
Hmm.
quality control and things of that nature. So that, I mean, that's just been really handy. And if you, because those drill bits, these are the carbon drill bits, it's helpful to take a nail and just make a little tiny dimple in the plastic. And if you have harder plastic, you can use something and just wrap on it to make a kind of like a center punch, just a
Hmm.
little tiny dot. That way, when you apply the drill to the surface, it doesn't walk
It
off.
doesn't wander. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
been
So
real
yeah.
challenge.
So a center punch is pretty easy to get a hold of. It's a device where it has a kind of a tip on it, and you hold it against the plastic, you pull back and release, and
Hmm.
it'll put a little dot in there. And so then your drill won't hunt. They call it hunting
Right.
whenever you're drilling your hole. You also want to make sure that you're coming in at a pretty good angle as well, kind of straight on to where the screw is going to be mounted. So
Hmm.
that way, if you're coming, if you got something mounted in the front, right, and you want it to kind of sit relatively flush, um, depending on how you want to approach that, you either want to come in straight in at the angle. So when you come through it, and this will help with adhesion of some sort, you're going to have to make sure that on the inside, so it's going to be canter a little bit, you're going to
Hmm.
want to make sure that you have some edging there when you're doing your standoff. So trimming them to making sure that they match the curvature of the hat. You'll end up with
Yeah.
with a better bond. Um, Now, with if you're going straight through and you want the screw head to match up directly against it, really you want to kind of come in at an angle directly in and making sure that you come in direct. And you kind of get a feel for it when you do it a couple of times.
Hmm.
You can test, you can get some acrylic stuff, or just buy some really cheap hard hats and do it a couple of times.
That's
Right. Sacrificial hard hats.
Yeah, and I thought about that, and really, like, because you can replace the cages in them. So if you get a good cage, but you need to replace the top
yeah.
part, it's not a
Right.
huge deal,
No,
right?
no.
So, because really the only thing you're interfacing with is the cage, which is what actually sits on your head.
Hmm.
So really, what the hard hat itself isn't a huge deal,
And
plastics wise.
you talked about the inside. That reminded me of things like countersinks. Monkey Dragon, do you have an example of a countersink that we can show?
I do upstairs. I'll be
Oh,
back.
well,
Is a hard
you
hat
don't have to run
All right.
upstairs.
Yeah.
is a
It,
hard hat thick enough to countersink?
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, in some spots.
I was trying to countersink the inside because remember those little nylon bolts are very short, and so
Right.
the drill index, of course, comes in handy for that because I could go a size up, the same size as the head, and then just carefully. And to be honest with you, sometimes I use my hand to turn the drill bit in order to kind of
Right,
shave
yeah.
it down. I don't get in there with the drill if I'm trying to do something.
Yeah, just make a big hole.
Yeah, I'll just punch right through it if I do that. But
Yeah, and you get hand drills that are pretty nice. They're meant for
Right.
like model work.
yeah,
And so, because I usually stick to the 5 and 3 millimeter size standards, you're gonna find a lot of your things that it's gonna be 5 or 3 mil.
Hmm.
So, if you just want to get a small set where you get like a small index where it goes from like 2 millimeter to 6 millimeter or something like that, then that's perfectly fine. You get small indexes like that everywhere.
Hmm.
Um, if you get the ones that are kind of meant for plastic, there's a certain aggressive spiral that they have on them,
Right.
the teeth on them. It'll actually extract the plastic better, and you'll get a cleaner hole, instead of using one that's meant for metal or meant for wood.
Hmm.
You can use them perfectly fine. You can actually use self-tapping screws in hard hats too, but you'll
oh
get some
yeah,
hunting problems. But yeah, you can use self-tappers where they have the very aggressive bitting on them,
Hmm.
and they'll drill their own hole. The only problem is they tend to have very pointy bits on them. So so if you want to do that, I'd recommend coming in from the inside out where you got the pointy bit, and then up into like a standoff or a bolt or what have you.
Right. Right.
However you need to attach it.
Yeah. Use stainless too. At least in my cases, I went with stainless just to not worry about sweat and all sorts of other things that
Rust. Yep.
can, yeah, all the corrosion and everything that's going to happen. That
Yep.
that's worked out well. They're pretty inexpensive. You can get in small kits. I'm actually thinking about trying to do some stuff with magnets just to make it easier to pull things on and off and
That's
integrate
not
it with
a
3D printing too. But I'll have to see.
that's not a bad idea. The plastics are small enough to be able to do magnets.
Oh yeah.
If you get a hard hat that is metal, which you can get steel hats.
Right.
Doing it with a magnet system with a very strong rare earth magnet is not a bad idea. I would recommend putting some form of slide protection because that stuff will slide, right? There's a friction thing going on.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I figured having like ones in locations on the actual hard hat shell to
Yeah.
index two magnets on pieces, and they'll just self-align and things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it'll take some experimentation, but it was just one of those things like, oh, they're inexpensive, they're small enough, they have enough strength that it shouldn't be much of a challenge to, to worry about having things falling off on you. So plus it would make it easier for travel if you need and things like that.
Yeah, but you definitely, that wouldn't be a bad idea to have some form of like metal plate on the inside,
Mm-hmm.
where you kind of hammer it in and attach it down with an adhesive or with fasteners.
Oh yeah.
And then having magnets for large things to attach to. That's not a bad idea, especially if you need to take it apart or you want to
Right.
add more things onto it, or kind of be free form with it. I think that would be a nice idea with metal hats. The only thing with metal hats is you got to worry about electricity. They're not meant for it, so
There's
try
that.
not to
Yeah.
cause fires.
Right.
I know a lot of people think it's a great idea to put lithium-ion batteries in their head, but I'm still in the game place where that's not a really good idea.
Yeah, lipo fires are no good. They're dangerous.
Unless it's a self-contained unit where it's like one of those single-cell battery packs, right?
Mhm.
That you get, those cheap ones. Those are relatively okay because at least it's got a complete protection circuit on it, and it's
Right.
like not going to. Because if it explodes in your head, I mean. It's probably
it's no
I'm
bueno.
surprised it hasn't happened yet. I know it's happened with badges before. Badges catching fire.
Yeah,
Right.
I think the problem with badges is if they're unprotected in the back, and then they're bouncing off of the other badges because badge
I've ruined a couple of badges that
Yeah.
way.
the short
It's-
circuit or yeah.
I actually have this kind of doubles. It's a kind of a clear plastic, right? It's kind of thick, but malleable to a certain degree, and you can kind of cut it with a razor blade very quickly. And I'll stick it to the back of badges just so they don't short out on things.
Right.
And I'll kind of cut it out and stick it to the back. And most of my badges have that. And I carry some around with me, but you can get it at craft stores pretty easily. It's just clear thin plastic that that has adhesive on it. And you got to make sure you get the acrylic adhesive, or you'll end up causing corrosion on the tin sometimes.
Hmm.
Because tin will corrode.
Yep.
Things will oxidize. You will get rust on your USB ports. I have that on a couple of my USB ports already.
Oh,
I've had to
wow.
sand off. Yeah. On my Raspberry Pi, it's an old one. My original one before I replaced it had rust on the USB ports. It was becoming harder to get things in and out of it. So you will have a rusting problem.
So, sorry, I was
No, it's
just
good.
looking at all the things that I have on my desk, and as far as attachments go, with 2812s or those types of string LEDs, have you ever used the adhesive that they come with on the back?
It's hot garbage for the most
Yeah.
part.
Yeah, I was wondering what your success rate was like.
Very bad. Generally, that's why I stick to the very high bond stuff, at least on my hat, for the backside of this.
Hmm.
Right. So, like, this strip here is being held on with a very high bond stuff, and it's silicone, but it's the reason why it sticks so well is because it tends to be very stuck in certain places and not stuck at all in others because it's
Mhm.
fuzzy. But I
Well,
haven't had any problems with it
The
coming
marketing
off.
material on this said that it was really going to be strong.
Nah, my recommendation would be to get strip. If it depends, if you're doing a short strip, right? And always get the weatherproof stuff. The diffusers on them are better, right?
Oh yeah.
So, if you can get like kind of the foggy, you can't see the LEDs at all type scenarios, then I really recommend um, some form of diffusing on your LEDs because LED lights are very
They're pretty
bright.
dang bright. Yeah, yeah,
I know
yeah.
my hat blinds people when I'm walking around with it at full
Yeah,
power,
we
right?
But
had
it's
no
so easy to
problem
find
seeing
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problems. I'm bounced. My hat's coming off of every single thing in the building.
So
So and you'll eat battery doing that, but
Yeah.
so other things for cable management, like I have these little clips, and I apologize, my lighting's
are
not
there
that
little
great.
double stick clips for?
They're double stick on the back, in it,
Yeah.
and then they just you can insert your cabling into there. I haven't experimented with these a lot yet, but that's one of the things I was looking at. And then
Those tend to break though. I've had problems specifically if it's at a hard point.
Mm.
So a hard point is something that flexes, right? So this is going to be for your tether or something that's moving. Those have a tendency to break. So
but
any of the hard plastic
I
ones.
feel like you're also trying to fit 10 gauge wire in there.
Well, okay. So like, let me give you an example of one that I had done. Right. So, in my hat here, which is booting up, um, so in the back here, right? Like if I was going to do that for my main tether, this has a lot of motion to it. It moves everywhere.
Oh yeah.
So the main thing that I have done is, hang on, is so I have put, oh here it is, these badge clips, and these aren't bad, especially if you take the hasp off of them. So it's kind of like just a piece of plastic with a button on them.
Right. Yeah.
So if too much, so you can kind of see here, I got it attached. So and that'll hold, right? So if I, pull down on this, the break off point now is going to be the actual badge clip itself will actually come off
Mm-hmm.
instead, and it's actually attached to the acrylic case. And I have a little bit of Velcro there. You can kind of see that little bit of Velcro there, so it doesn't slide off very easily.
Oh yeah.
So, and that's just that little kind of harsh, tiny Velcro that you can get that's really, kind of not very loose. But so with this stuff, it's really good for attaching it to things that have a lip. So like the outside brim of your hat, it's not a bad
Mhm.
idea. This is for breakaway points. You want to think about that, right? If
Right.
you snag your tether, and tethers are a good idea still, in my opinion, for power. if you snag your tether and doorknobs, which you will do,
Oh,
you want something where if it snags it, it's gonna take the hat with it, because it will. And you want a good pivot point for that. And you don't want it too high or in a weird area because it wants to go straight back and up. Or it'll break away and it gives more slack. But then it has something else where it's a hard stop, so you don't tear off your USB ports. That's another problem that you'll run into if you're running with tethers, is you can tear off your USB ports because it's pretty long.
right.
Like this thing goes on forever. Also, if you also want to make sure that you can do this with your battery on your USB ports. This works. And stick to 3 cables. You only really use 3 cables with most battery packs.
Yeah.
And don't go over 100 watts. God help you if you do, because that's just so much heat on your head. Everything just gets hot.
Honestly, part of my journey was getting the most power out of just the 2 18650s I was using and the longest run time. So I tried to go. I mean, it was kind of fun to, pick parts that weren't as powerful.
The Pi Zero is great because you can get it to run really low power if you underclock it. I'm actually, and this is something that I'm doing for next year, there's a single board computer being made with a good friend of mine that made the giant board in a Featherwing format. A custom single board computer built for hard hats.
Huh.
It's going to be small. And I got a picture I can show you on Twitter.
Nice.
It's going to have no pins on it, so you just solder directly for the most part on it.
Okay.
But all of the ports are available: USB, Ethernet, HDMI. It has the standard ribbon cable RGB display, so you can just do straight RGB out for it.
Nice.
It's got a bunch of pins available, and it will sit flush on a circuit board, or it'll sit flush on a hat. And they'll have mounting holes as well.
Cool.
So are you going to have one of these in hand before DEF CON?
Not this DEF CON, next DEF CON.
Okay.
They're going to be made this year.
Nice.
They're relatively inexpensive. They're going to cost about $20 a pop. They will have onboard RAM. They'll have onboard RAM, USB, host, or receive, and then onboard 4 gigs of eMMC.
Wow.
Oh, I like
nice.
eMMC.
Yeah.
So we'll have storage, RAM. It's based off of a decent chip. We'll have it. The chip that's with it has mainline Linux support, so it's all open source.
Nice.
Even the KCAD project is going to be released for free. We'll actually have the KCAD drawings for all of it, so you can kind of shift some of those pins around that you need.
So are they doing like
That's
a really
awesome.
big run to keep the cost down?
You don't really need to do a big run. Amazingly enough, with PCBWay, you can get like a 50 board run. Not even a 50 board, a 5 board run for $100.
Well, I mean, but I'm thinking about the parts too. Like
That's with parts.
System on the chip.
Yeah.
And wow.
Because you get them from DigiKey and they just do cut tape.
Oh yeah.
So, and then that's how that works. Yeah, I've been working quite a while with Gogard. He's the one who made the giant board, and we've been talking about some of the requirements of a hat. And we went over some of the design aspects of what would be good for a hat, right? So, custom cables for everything. Here, let me show you the. I'm going to share my screen real fast. I'm going to here. I'll give you the image. Let's see here. I'll send it to you in Zoom. But this is the layout that we agreed upon. So it's castellated, but also it has a row behind it, so it can be breadboarded. And each one of those is a different pin. So it's got a very high pin density. It's quite small. It's 68 by 40 millimeter.
Oh,
so
that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see. 68. Oh yeah. I mean, Pi is that's just a little bit shorter. You said by 40.
Yep. 68 by 40.
Okay. Yeah, it's thinner than a pie, about almost about the same length.
Yep.
Full size. Sorry, I should be more specific.
More pins than an AT Mega, and
Oh wow.
and it has breakouts for every single I/O that you can think of: I2C, USB, both ports. The power of the the DigiKey roller. Those are fun.
They are nice.
The particular chip that he's planning on using for it is pretty powerful. I think it's a quad core ARM.
Wow.
Well, that'll be fun.
With I think a gig of RAM on it. So yeah, he's working on the traces for it now. We should have something by the middle of this. Well, I should say towards the end of this year. I plan on giving a couple to you guys to work with as well to incorporate with your hats.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
So it should work very well. The screen connector that comes with it is very nice. So
we're coming up on an hour, and I'm afraid Zoom is going to cut us off in another 15 or so. There are a couple things that I wanted to cover. One of those is safety.
Yes.
Monkey Dragon, you want to start off with safety stories? Working with hard hats?
I've been fairly lucky in that regard, but we did talk about this with, especially when it comes to drilling holes or even just, actually, you know what? I probably had a couple of close calls trying to carve out holes on the first hat. Be really careful where you're holding the hard hat if you're drilling into it. So
don't hold the hat like this and then drill into your palm.
Yeah, then your hand ends up being sacrificial. You don't want to do that. And also, if you're doing it at your parents' place and you're doing it on the kitchen table, make sure something's on the table before you put your hard hat there so you don't drill their table. Things like that. No fun.
So actually, I mean, holding the hard hat is hard enough. It's slippery, it's round, it doesn't always sit flat when you're drilling. So I actually was sitting like cross-legged and I had it on my lap. And here I am, I'm just like, rah, 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 and then I realized that probably wasn't the best idea.
Yeah.
So what I would do, since this is kind of one of the fringe benefits of being a really fat guy, is you can set things on your chest very easily, just going, yep, that's where it lives. So a lot of the holes that are on my hard hat was me drilling into it while I was on my chest being an idiot.
Just be careful, yeah.
Or kind of holding it at an angle and going in at it because it wasn't going to go anywhere. But I mean, try not to drill holes into places with fleshy bits.
Yep.
The drill does not care about your fleshy bits. It will eat it just like the plastics.
Oh yeah.
I have horror stories from other projects where I've gone through my hands. Or the one time I accidentally shorted out 15 kilovolt capacitor with a screwdriver and vaporized the screwdriver.
Oof.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's a good sized capacitor.
And I ended up with a scar on my, you can't really see it, but I ended up with a scar on my wrist from the molten slag of from the screwdriver that ended up on my arm.
Oh, wow.
So
that was super.
Although I wasn't drilling, I had the Dremel, which again, eye protection, face mask because it's throwing crap everywhere. And I had the hard hat like wedged between my knees as I was cutting those Wi-Fi holes out. The one that I showed last time, I thought I had it here. It might be in the garage. You have to be really mindful of where that super high speed spinning bit is at. I mean, I almost just dropped it.
Oh, and also the cheap blades that you buy from China are made from asbestos. Don't use those.
Oh, even better. That's going for the bonus round. If it doesn't get you today, it'll get you in 20 years.
It's okay. Just engage safety squints and YOLO. You're fine.
Safety squints.
Safety squint. Oh, no. Safety flip-flops, too. Don't forget those.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
So
I mean,
how ironic would it be if we're wearing a piece of safety equipment and we don't talk about safety? That would just be criminal. So just be careful out there. And like I said, the plastic's really soft. It'll punch through before you know it. I've actually used a jeweler's screwdriver to make a hole just by like an
yeah.
awl, just sitting there, and it's yeah.
One of the things with the hard hat, it's not actually hard. It's meant to flex. It's meant to be a soft plastic. So if something hits it, it deflects it, right? Like it'll bounce off of it. So it's a very soft plastic. You don't really have to go at it hard like you would like with like a very hard plastic, like what you'd see on cars, right? Like the stuff that'll shatter.
yeah.
Hard hats are designed not to shatter. Right. So anything that's designed not to shatter tends to be very soft. And so when you're going through into it, now you can structurally compromise your hard hat to the point where it will break.
Oh yeah.
Right. Because it's still a plastic and it will still break if you have very thin parts. So if you're making very aggressive cuts in your hard hat and you're taking off a lot of material,
Not me.
you'll end up with fractures along corners and stuff to the edges.
Oh yeah.
But they have things in place on hard hats that'll try to prevent the fracture from going very far. But epoxy, that's the most you could do. Is putting some epoxy on there and hoping for the best, using like a syringe or something to really get it into the crack.
Yeah,
Right.
I
Or just throw it out and try again.
I also forgot to mention when you're drilling or before you're drilling, I use a permanent marker with a really fine tip to mark where I'm going to drill because it just wipes off. Unless you've sanded it or you've somehow abraded it, these cheap hard hats are very slick on the outside.
So specifically with markings, and this is with most marker on those hard hats, is that alcohol will remove permanent marker off a plastic, period. Right? It practically turns it into a dry erase. Something that I've used in the past for markings, isopropyl alcohol works fine for removing permanent marker. Turns it purple, and then you remove it outright. Don't be afraid if you don't have anything attached to it. Just throw it in the kitchen sink and scrub it, because that's what I've done for markings. Right. Or in the dishwasher if you really want to go to town. But usually just start.
Check your heat Check your heat.
Yeah. Makes it really malleable. If you are wanting to change the fundamental shape of your hat using like a mold or something like that to some crazy shape, they do have relatively low melting temperatures, most hard hats. It's in like the sub 300s. Generally it'll be what your oven can do. They will outgas.
Yeah.
They will have very nasty outgassing that they'll do, and it will remove some of the things of sorts. But just be careful with that one if you're doing those.
Now I got the Zoom warning.
Yep. 10-minute warning.
All right, so
next time we're using Google Meet.
Yeah, we'll use something different next time. Not using Zoom anymore, but it is coming up on 7. So I'll go ahead and close it out. Any last round of comments?
Back to the safety thing before we go on. Remember, if you do cut into it, you're probably not going to be using it for safety. So this is for fun. This is an opportunity to learn, talk with people.
Don't use the hard hat you use at work. God help you.
Yes.
Don't do that. Also worry about weight. Do lots of testing with runs. If you do, if you wear a hat for a whole day with what you have mounted, see if you can handle it, right? You're going to be there with a week. It's going to be very hot and very annoying if you have a hat that doesn't fit well and it doesn't feel right?
Yeah.
Like it's lopsided. You're having to adjust it all the time. You're trying to deal with cabling and it's just everywhere, right? Like, if you're going to wear it the whole con, just test it. Lots of testing. Don't be afraid to wear it to Walmart. Don't be afraid to wear it to the store.
You just
or
reminded
whatever
me, you definitely need a field test. Mine almost ended up in a urinal.
Yeah. Gotta watch out for that kind of stuff, right? Because you'd rather have it happen at home, where you have a couple of months to fix or replace or sanitize.
And nobody's
Surprise.
around to see it happen.
Right.
I have dropped the battery pack in the toilet before.
Oh,
Ooh.
panic.
I stopped using that battery pack. I kind of left it.
Nice.
Yeah, that was second year. It was one of the metal ones too. So I'm like, well, that one's done. I'll just leave that
Yikes. All right.
I'll put a little sticky note on it. Do not use.
On that note, stay safe. We'll see you next week. Talking hard hats. And on our agenda next week, we have we're going to be talking about power options.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
Power is
Yeah,
fun.
Power's fun.
Fire.
No, that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yes. And I have some new stuff that's coming down. At least for hard hats for my PDU system, my power distribution unit.
So, and you're going to bring it next week, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll have some of the basic boards, right? So what I kind of showed you last week, I still have that board. I do have some connections for it, and I'll kind of go over the details of working with stuff like that.
That'd be great.
That's what we want to do.
All
right.
I also want to kind of look into like adhesive metal, like that tape stuff that's metal. That might not be a bad idea if it's properly protected.
Interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to go into more depth on that next week.
Oh, and a reminder, folks, find us on Twitter at Hard Hat Brigade. If you DM me your address, we'll send you some Hard Hat Brigade stickers. If you want to show off your hard hat or you have creative ideas you want to share and you want to be on our stream, more than happy to have you. With that, before Zoom totally kicks us off, we'll exit stage left gracefully. Have a great week.
Right?
All right.
All I have is a wall.
All right. Bye-bye.
See ya.
All right. Well.